Good evening and welcome to this final installment in our VB Safe Together information series, what I hope has been a very informative series of Zoom meetings to talk about the opening of school. I'm Dr. Aaron Spence, Superintendent of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and I'm very pleased to be here with you tonight to talk about that very thing, which is being safe together. Because as we think about it, being safe together will be really the only way and the fastest way that we are going to get our teachers and our students back together face to face in our classrooms, where I know we all want them to be. And we of course know where they want to be. You know, as we were preparing to talk about tonight, I was thinking back to where we were in March and how far we've come from here. And it's hard to believe how much has changed in what feels like a very short amount of time. Obviously, on a personal level, we're all so much more aware of space and our personal space and of how much we get from facial expressions and just how much we miss being in each other's companies. And I know I've felt that this week as teachers have begun preparing to come back to work and working with one another collegially, but also getting ready for our students to return. And as we've been doing that, we've all been managing to take multitasking to an entirely different level. And as we've been doing that, I've been thinking about all of the struggles and the just superhuman effort that it took when we closed the schools in spring to keep going, to keep moving forward, that our families had to engage in, that our educators had to engage in, and how all of that happened with grace and with so much creativity, all while everybody was managing their own lives and trying to understand what it meant to be living in the midst of a global pandemic. I remember just how amazing and resilient our educators and our custodians and our food services staff were when we closed schools, but I want you to know they've been even more amazing since we've been getting ready to open school. And all of our folks have been working tirelessly, nonstop. Many of our folks without vacation, some without sleep, some literally working 7 days a week to make sure we are as ready as we can be next Tuesday for the return of school. Now, I want to be clear as we get started with that conversation about what the return to school looks like tonight, that it is not going to be perfect. Because, you know, if we are honest with ourselves, there's never been anything like what we are working on now in the history of our lives in education. We are continuing to build 2 new school divisions from the ground up, one that's virtual, one that's face-to-face, and to understand the significant and interesting challenges that come with offering both of those simultaneously. But I want you to know that our expectations have not changed. I have very clear expectations that I'm going to share with you, and they're simple. Here's what I expect as we start the school year. And this is something I share all the time with our teachers as they come into our school division. 3 things, 3 simple things. I want to make sure that our students are cared for, that whether they're with us face-to-face or whether they're home virtually, that our students have the supports they need to be successful, that their basic needs are met, that they have food and shelter and loving and caring adults around them, that they're cared for. The second thing I want to make sure of is that our students learn something every day. As you've heard about, and I'm sure you'll hear about this evening, we have prepared a robust experience for your students in a virtual environment as we begin the year. And for those who choose to continue in that environment, that will also continue as we bring students back face to face. And so I expect them to learn something every day, and I know that can and will happen. And the third thing is that I expect that our students are loved, that they know that they've got loving and caring adults around them who, in the midst of all of this sort of chaos of this global pandemic, are here for them to help them succeed. And as our students begin coming back to school, you'll see that our teachers are ready to welcome them and to warmly embrace them and help make sure that they have their most successful year yet. So those are my expectations, and I know and believe that our parents and our guardians and our educators and the rest of our Virginia Beach City Public School staff have proven time and time again that they can meet those expectations. I mean, frankly, just based on what we accomplished between March and now. So let's keep at it. Let's keep our students safe. Let's keep our staff safe. Let's keep learning together. And with some grace and some patience and some flexibility, we will figure out how to do this and we will be ready both for Tuesday and as we go forward. Tonight, I'm joined by several members of our senior leadership team, Dr. Don Robertson, our Chief Schools Officer, and Mr. Jack Freeman, our Chief Operations Officer, and we'll be answering questions from a few students, and Dr. Kip Rogers, our Chief Academic Officer. Hi, Kip. And tonight we'll be answering questions from a few of our students, some of our parents and staff members. You're also going to be seeing on your screen Valerie Walraven and Allison Yoder, who are our sign language interpreters. And so we want to welcome all of you to tonight's event. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Admin Alexander, our Director of Community Engagement, to get some questions answered. So, Mr. Alexander.
Hi, Dr. Spence. The first question that we have for you and the panel. So on Tuesday morning, I wake up and I log into my Chromebook and get on Schoology. What happens next?
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's a great question. I was on a call this afternoon, an orientation call with my third grade son's teachers, and I had the same questions. And so I think to help talk about that, I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Kip Rogers, who's our Chief Academic Officer. He's going to walk you through a little bit about what our school day looks like. And certainly I think Dr. Robertson may want to join in as well.
Sure. Thank you for asking that question, Dr. Alexander. So on the first day of school, you can expect students to be greeted with a warm, happy face, excited about the first day of school. That's the first thing that a student can expect. The second thing that the student can expect is to go through the routines, practices, and procedures in terms of how to access the learning. And then, of course, the first day of school will be spent establishing relationships and letting them know all about the classes. They will review the syllabi at the secondary level. They'll have morning meetings at the elementary level, and just really getting into the process of learning how to navigate this new process that we're going to be in terms of the virtual space. Our families have had access to the schedule for the day. So of course the teachers will walk through the schedule for the day and let students know what they can expect in terms of their learning. They'll have an opportunity to meet all of their teachers for the first day of school. They'll have an opportunity to ask questions on the first day of school. They'll have an opportunity to learn more about their classmates on the first day of school. They'll learn about the new resources that we've made available to them. They'll learn about ClassLink. They'll learn about Securely. They'll learn about all of the routines and practices that will accompany making them successful for the year. They'll also learn about the resources that we'll make available to them outside of school. And they'll just spend a day really being made to feel comfortable and loved, and that we care about them even though we can't see them in the physical space. Dr. Robertson, did you want to add to that?
Yes, Dr. Rogers, I would just add that for any student who's been a part of Virginia Beach City Public Schools in the past, the first day, next Tuesday, will have a lot of the same elements that you would have received or been exposed to in previous years, as Dr. Rogers has mentioned. So we are trying to replicate the most robust and familiar learning experience for our students in the virtual environment so that we can get back to teaching and learning.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Rogers and Dr. Robertson. So the next question comes from Alicia Stallings. She has a 5th grade student from Green Run Elementary School. Her question is, as a working parent, what are some additional resources that children have so they can be successful for the upcoming school year?
So I can take that as well. All right, great. So I'm glad you asked that question. One of the things that I didn't mention in the first, as a part of the first answer, is that our students will have access to their teachers in a synchronous environment, very much like what we have now. So our students will be will have access to either Zoom or Google Meets. And in some instances, we have Big Blue Button, which is a part of Schoology. So part of them logging on the first day is to get a chance to see their teacher face to face. Now, in Virginia Beach, we are certainly very fortunate in that all of our students will have access to technology very much like what we have right now. Either they'll have an iPad in preschool or they'll have access to a Chromebook. So that's great in and of itself because of the rich resources, digital resources that we have available to them during the school day are also available to them outside of the school. Tools like Redbird, tools like Storia, which is a great resource that we've acquired for our elementary students to continue that opportunity for them to read during the school day and certainly outside of the school day. We have many of our students who have access to iExcel and many other resources that they'll be using throughout the course of the day. They'll have access outside of the school day as well. Now, in terms of students who are having difficulty through remediation and or enrichment, we do have many opportunities for our students to take advantage of tutoring services. So for example, one tutoring service that we have available for our military connected students is called tutor.com. And that's a wonderful resource for our students, those students to have an opportunity to connect one-on-one with a resource to help them if they get into trouble spots. We've also expanded our opportunities for tutoring for our secondary students. Last year, we had a great resource called FEV, and we've expanded that to our high school students to be able to have access to one-on-one tutoring 24 hours a day, should they need it. And certainly with our elementary students, we have a plethora of resources available for them throughout the school day. And certainly the first line of connectivity with resources absent what's happening in the classroom is to make some connections with the classroom teacher and certainly with building level administrators should the parent need some additional support. And we do have a committee that's working on, that has been working on providing opportunities to support families who need that support outside of the school day.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. So the next question comes from a staff member. Her name is Brenda Lamb. She's a special learning disabilities teacher from Bayside High School. Her question is, in the last session, it was shared that teacher desk would have a plexiglass window. For inclusion classes, will the inclusion teacher also have a plexiglass window at their desk?
So the short answer to that question is yes. They will have those plexiglass barriers available to them at their desks. And I think if we could just spend a minute, Mr. Freeman, talking a little bit more about what's happening, because people who may not have heard this might be wondering, what are they talking about with plexiglass? Could you just spend a minute talking about that?
Totally. And so thank you, Dr. Spence. So in last week's session, we shared some of the initiatives that we're doing as far as putting plexiglass in different locations throughout the building. And we described things like in the office where there's contact with customers, at the security assistance desk at the front of the school. And we also shared that in teachers' classrooms, there would be plexiglass barriers. So in addition to those things, we are pursuing other options. Back to the way that Dr. Spence answered, yes, for those inclusion. And there are, in addition to the plexiglass barriers that we showed as that example in the video last week, there are other examples that we're looking at putting in some of the rectangular tables and for inclusion teachers to have something that's lightweight and can be moved easily from one place to another to be able to support that, that distancing for those types of teachers. And it's not just inclusion teachers. We have other educators that need to have a little bit closer contact, but we want to provide that extra safety measure for them. So we will be providing those.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Thank you for that answer as well. Good information along the, in terms of plexiglass and understanding. The second, or the next question again comes from another staff member, Beatrix Hage. She's a custodian at Tallwood High School. And her question is, as a cleaning worker, what is the procedure for lunchtime? Because there are people who spill food and at the same time spill in other places. will we have a certain time to clean up, then a time to disinfect?
All right, so Dr. Spence, if you like, I'll take that one again. So thank you for the question. And this is when we talk about VB Safe Together, we talk about how important it is to be kind of part of a team to be able to accomplish these things. And so part of our planning process, we have acknowledged the multiple different locations at the same time that might need to be clean. And we've attempted to account for that. All of the head custodians have received training on enhanced cleaning measures, and they are your best person to connect with. It's most appropriate to handle that at the school level and at the site level for how exactly your team at the school is going to be able to handle that. But they will be able to guide you with exactly how we intend to respond in those situations.
Great, thank you for that, Jack. I think along the same lines of the hand sanitizer, I want to go to a question we got from a young lady who is a student, Dominique Solano at the Old Donation School. And I wanted to just see, I'm sorry, that's a parent. And the question is, can my child carry their own hand sanitizer? So can you speak to that?
Yes. So the short answer is yes, and thank you for that. So we have 4 things that we talk about things that will keep us safe. So stay at home when you're sick, keep your distancing, wear a mask, and practice proper hand hygiene. So we appreciate that parents are kind of supporting their kids with being able to practice that. So small personal sized hand sanitizer, absolutely. Just ensure that it meets the requirements of 60% above, because that's the effective hand sanitizer for COVID-19. Also realize that we have in every classroom and in every office space, we have positioned hand sanitizer that can be used there. And we're ensuring that all of our hand washing stations have properly filled soap. Hand washing is still the most effective method, but we realize that it's not always the most convenient method. So having hand sanitizer available to support proper hand hygiene is an excellent practice.
Thank you, and we'll continue to reinforce that, and folks will see it as they come into our building, and if they watch the videos from last week's session about those efforts that we're taking to be safe in our buildings and those health mitigation strategies, that there'll be lots of signage reminding people about what's expected in terms of washing our hands, using hand sanitizer, staying apart from one another, and wearing those masks. So thanks for reinforcing that. I have a question here, and I think Dr. Robertson, this one's probably going to fall on you. We're going to shift gears a little bit, and this is about sports. And specifically, this comes from a parent who's got children at Plaza Middle School and at the Bayside Health Sciences Academy. But this is about how's the change in the time change in middle school hours going to impact sports. And there's a couple specific questions. It says, will kids be expected to wait until the new 4:30 p.m. release time to begin practice, or will they be allowed to begin after the conclusion of block 4? And I think the general statement is they're concerned about the lack of lighting on the fields and keeping students until after 6 p.m. So could you speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Spence. I know that athletics and activities are incredibly important to the school experience. It really gives you that rounded education. In terms of middle school sports, middle schools last year got out at 4 o'clock, and this year we'll be getting out at 4:30. The impact in terms of athletics, once athletics are allowed to resume, is that practices will start 30 minutes later than they did last year because school is getting out 30 minutes later. At this particular time, the Virginia Beach Middle School League is adhering to the guidance from the Virginia High School League in terms of resuming athletic activities, which, as you may or may not know, the Virginia High School League is not going to be resuming activities until later in December in a reduced schedule. And so there is another meeting of the Virginia High School League coming up, which will provide us some additional guidance in terms of how athletics will look at the high school level and at the middle school level. So in terms of when can practice begin, practice cannot begin until the end of the school day, which is at 4:30. And there was another follow-up in there in terms of daylight savings time and the impact of it, getting dark earlier would have on athletics and practice times. That will be no change and it's been in the past. We can't control when the sun goes down. So we can practice until dusk and then we need to come in. And so where we may have enjoyed an hour and 20 minutes of practice time at the middle school level in previous years, this year it's going to be 30 minutes less.
Thank you. Dr. Robertson, do you want to just for a second talk about the VHSL schedule and what they've put out in terms of the guidance around how the seasons are going to start? Because I think some people are wondering if we're going to have sports. And so you mentioned that there's a schedule that's been put out by the VHSL, but people may not know that. Do you want to speak to that briefly?
Yes, and there is another meeting of the Virginia High School League on September 17th that will yield a lot more information in terms of what athletics will look like. But basically what the Virginia High School League did was they reduced their seasons down significantly to begin in December. And they also reduced their contest limitations down to 60%. So for example, if you played 10 football games last year, this year you'd only play 6 football games. Not only did they reduce the number of contests, they also reduced the playoffs and how many teams qualify for the playoffs in the schedule. And in their reduced time frame for the 3 seasons, there's more overlap than there has been in the past. Normally a season will end, the next Monday a season will begin. That's not the case this year. The seasons overlap more, which could have an impact on those multi-sport athletes in terms of missing parts of seasons that they didn't miss before. But I know the Virginia High School League is collecting a ton of information from across the state. It's trying to do the very best they can in a very difficult environment, which we can certainly appreciate.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robertson. Dr. Robertson, I think this one will be for you as well. And it's a great question. Honestly, it's something that in this kind of new world, we have to think about. And so the question comes from Ms. Charlene Johnson, who's got a student at Lansdowne Middle School. And the question is, I'd like to know, what attire does my child need to wear for virtual classes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So because your child could be on screen, on camera, unless they've signed a media release opt-out form, we need to make sure your child is dressed appropriately. We have a policy 5-41 restricts wearing lewd graphics, displaying offensive or obscene language, advertising alcohol or any illegal substance, or having any gang affiliation. It also, again, the way your child dresses to prepare for school sets the foundation, gives them the mindset of going into an academic environment. So, we all may have our favorite pajamas, but it wouldn't be appropriate for your child to stay in their pajamas to try to transition to learning, because just that feeling of being relaxed in your pajamas is not putting you in the right mindset to learn. So it's important that you work with your child to find a location where they can be comfortable learning and that they dressed as if they were going to school. And that's very important.
Yeah, I know for at least one of my children who was in our school system, I had to occasionally remind her that even face-to-face pajamas were not an appropriate option for attire. And those of you with high school students will know what I'm talking about. And I think it's a point that you made, Dr. Robertson, that's important about also having an appropriate place to learn. And so not only does the attire help signal that, hey, you're in school and this is important, but because we're asking students to follow a daily schedule and to be online with their teachers and with their classmates, that this is not like the spring. This is school in a virtual environment, and they should have a signal at home that this is the place where I'm going to learn. So it doesn't have to be a desk. It can be the dining room table or the kitchen table, but it's the same place that they'll come to every day to learn. And they know that when I turn my computer on and I log in to ClassLink for that first time for the morning and I see that first morning announcement from my first block teacher or from my teacher in elementary school, that I'm ready to go and this is going to be where I'm at when I'm learning today, and just help to establish and set that routine. And those routines matter so much for our learners. And so we want to encourage all of our parents to work with their child to find that place for learning and to understand you're back in school come Tuesday. So with that, I'm going to move to another question. And this comes from a student. Joshua, who is at Windsor Oaks Elementary School. And his question is, what will virtual PE look like in our elementary schools? And again, kind of a great question, Dr. Robertson, if you think about it. I mean, this is just not something that we've experienced before. So maybe talk a little bit about virtual PE, and I'd go ahead and layer on to, so we'll answer Joshua's question first, but I'd layer on to that. What will something like art look like or music look like in our schools when we're virtual?
So I can help with that, Dr. Robinson, if you want. So Joshua, I hope you're listening. I can't tell whether you are or not, but what I can share with you, Joshua, is that PE will look very similar to what it did in the brick and mortar space, with the exception that you'll be, of course, virtual. So Joshua, just so you know, we've been offering virtual PE at the secondary level for quite a long time. So we kind of have some things down pat in reference to good practices for virtual PE instruction. What I can assure you is that your physical education teacher will definitely be involved in teaching you physical education. And that would be both synchronous, which is live learning like we're doing now, as well as asynchronous lessons and activities that you would be able to access at your own time. So for example, you could have an opportunity to participate in activities that involve health as well as personal physical fitness. So you might participate in a dance activity or a yoga activity or Pilates or some other activity where you are engaged in learning in a physical space like we're doing now. And then you have an opportunity to do some personalized activity, for example, walking, or going down a bike trail, or doing something along that nature. And then you'll have an opportunity to log what you've done, and you have an opportunity to talk about it. So a class, for example, may look like, if you have class that starts at 9:00 a.m., and your teacher's probably going to ask you to log on to Zoom about 5 minutes early, and then she'll let you in, or he'll let you in. They'll take attendance, and then you'll do some kind of warm-up activity or a bell ringer where students have an opportunity to participate in some kind of discussion, or you discuss a health tip of the day, or do a mind map. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with mind maps, where you have an opportunity to take some notes and just get the day started with a warm-up. And then the next process, and this holds true for art as well as in music, you'll have an opportunity to do some kind of student choice activity. In many instances, it'll be some kind of starter activity where you have an opportunity to practice a skill in your space. And then there's an appetizer activity where you get to expand on the activity a little bit more. And then you have an entree activity, and then you have what's a dessert activity. So you get to pick and choose what you'd like to do as a student. And the teacher will provide you with a due date for when that activity is due, and you'll do some of it in class. Of course, we don't expect you to spend the entire PE time in front of a screen. Part of that time will be spent, Joshua, with you doing some things outside of the classroom and getting the opportunity to get up and move. And then, just like we do in regular school, Joshua, you'd have an exit ticket where you get a chance to demonstrate what you've learned and have an opportunity to practice a little bit more. And you'll have some chance to document that. Certainly, teacher will probably use Google to have you do that. And then, of course, there'll be an assessment at the end of the unit. So it'll be very similar to what you've participated in during brick and mortar school, with the exception of there being some modifications for the virtual space. And the same thing holds true for art. In art, it'll be similar. You'll have an opportunity to do some art activities, and we do have some resources that'll be sent to our elementary students that we're in the process of purchasing. So you have a little bit of art kit, so you'll be able to do some things at home. So we're excited about that. And the same thing holds true for music. So even though we're not in the brick and mortar space, Joshua, I think that we're going to make the best possible physical education class, music class, art class that we possibly can with the resources and the strategies that our teachers are prepared to give you. Thanks for asking that question, Joshua.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. So you mentioned PE, and I wanted to just throw it back for half a second. Do you want to talk a little bit about Mondays? And because I know there's a little bit of expectation that some of that can be done on Mondays. So do you want to talk just a little bit about what Mondays might look like for students relative to learning? Because we know that Monday is a professional learning day for our teachers. It's an opportunity for our teachers to collaborate because they're going to have some sort of restrictions around how they can work together during the course of the week because of the physical distancing expectations that we have. It's an opportunity for faculty meetings to take place virtually because we can't hold them in the same way that we used to be able to take. So Monday will be for teachers an opportunity to do things that they won't have the opportunity to do the rest of the week. But we still expect students to learn on Monday. And so we've kind of listed some things on their schedules, and I know their teachers will talk more about that, but do you want to just give our parents and folks who are watching this evening a little bit more about what that Monday could look like?
Of course, of course. Monday is absolutely an instructional day. Absolutely an instructional day. I can't emphasize that enough. It's an instructional day. While we may not follow the specific set schedule that we do on Tuesday through Friday, nevertheless, on Mondays will be primarily asynchronous days, which means that students will do learning on their own time, and they have a lot of flexibility with which they do that learning. So for example, Joshua just shared with Joshua that the physical education teacher may assign an activity where they have to run a mile within a certain amount of time or walk a mile within a certain amount of time. Well, they could probably do that assignment on a Monday and log not only that instructional time, but certainly log the fact that they've actually completed the work. So that's one example. Another example is that's an opportunity for us to provide remediation and enrichment in small groups. So the potential does exist for some students to have an opportunity to interact synchronously with their teachers, very much like what we're doing now on Zoom, based on data that were collected on the Tuesday and Friday prior to that Monday. So it gives us an opportunity to engage with students on a smaller scale and to provide some more individualized attention to those students who need it most. And it gives us an opportunity to provide enrichment activities for those students who need some more and some additional opportunities to engage in the learning. So it's really an opportunity for us to expand learning, but the expectation is that students are learning, all students are learning at the very least in an asynchronous fashion as per direction from their teacher. And as Dr. Spence shared, that time for teachers will primarily be spent with them engaging in the learning to make sure that we are being excellent deliverers of virtual instruction and that we're sharing resources and best practices and having an opportunity to engage in providing students with quality feedback on the assignments that were given and providing grades to students so that they can be successful in the content matter that's given. So just a lot of opportunity to expand the teaching and learning processes that are taking place on Tuesdays through Fridays.
I had to unmute myself. So that's great. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I appreciate that elaboration. And I know our teachers and our students will have more conversation about that next week as we head into the following Monday. We have had some other questions come in, and then there's just some things that I want us to also continue to touch on. Mr. Freeman, I'm going to turn back to you for a second because there was a question about student drop-off. There's a parent who's expressing some concern. They've heard there's going to be a lot of folks dropping off their students this year as opposed to years past. And they're a little concerned about, are we ready for student drop off, and what will that look like with physical distancing and all of that? So could you just talk briefly about our plan for that?
Yes, and thank you for the question. So we're aware and we've encouraged from a transportation standpoint to be able to support distancing that as parents can, to find alternate means of transportation for their kids to be able to get to school. We have some schools that historically have had higher rates of parent drop-offs. So we already are knowing, we know that, and we anticipate that there will be more traffic. We are looking at those from a planning standpoint, a flow standpoint, and we're providing additional experts out there, people out there that'll be able to manage it. Everybody knows the first couple of days of school, there's a settling out period that goes on from a drop-off standpoint, from a transportation standpoint, and we fully anticipate that will be the case this year as well. But we put the planning and resources in up front to be able to mitigate it as much as possible. And then we'll monitor and see how the first days go and see what really the conditions that exist at the time are, and then we'll make adjustments to make improvements as it goes on. Now, once you arrive at the site, Dr. Spence, as you related to physical distancing, we're setting things up so you can keep distancing from as kids leave their cars, leave their buses, arrive on their bikes, arrive by foot, so they can flow smoothly into the building. For example, we're planning to ensure that they touch as few handholds as possible as they're heading into the building. Again, for good hand hygiene and to limit the amount of bottlenecking that may occur in and around doors.
That's great. And I know last week you shared some videos about a little bit what it might look like as you approach a building. And so I would encourage folks to go back to our website on our fall 2020 reopening site, and all of those videos from each of these VB Safe Together sessions are archived there and can be seen there. So I'm going to move on to another question I've gotten here. How can my child get in touch with their school counselor if they're having a problem during the school day? So I'll flip that over to you, Dr. Robertson.
Yes. As always, I would encourage you first to call the school during the regular business day. School hours are a little bit different depending on elementary, middle, or high school. So just know that between 9 and 3, every school is open, but they may have a little bit different hours in terms of when they open and close because of the school hours. But I would encourage you to call the school first, or if you have email address, to go ahead and email the school counselor or principal, assistant principal, teacher, whomever you need to make contact with. And that process would still stay the same.
That's great. Thank you. Another question, probably for you, Dr. Robertson. Are schools going to be holding open houses this year?
Yes. All schools will hold a virtual open house, and the schools will be communicating directly to the school community through a newsletter or Alert Now message on when the open house will occur, and it'll be a virtual open house.
Great. Another question about our schools and sort of what's happening around our schools. Are the schools open to the public now, or do I need to keep making an appointment to go into the school? So I think that's a question, my child's teacher, I want to meet with them. Do I need to make an appointment for that, or can I just come up to the school?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When we're in a virtual environment, all visitors must make an appointment. When we return to school face-to-face, we're still going to ask you to make an appointment so we can ensure that we are maintaining all of our physical distancing mitigation strategies in place. So we are going to continue to ask until further notice for you to make an appointment rather than just to show up.
Great.
Now, of course, Dr. Spence, if there's an emergency situation, there's always a caveat, but if you know you need to come, please make an appointment.
Okay. So this was an interesting question. and we'll take a swing at it here. During virtual instruction, if my child is homesick, can they still log in virtually with their class on Zoom to complete work? And I appreciate that question because, again, it sort of goes back to nothing is like it was in this environment. So, normally a child's homesick, they got to stay home, they miss instruction. But what about if it's a virtual class and the child is sick but is well enough to log on?
I would say if they're well enough to log on, to go ahead and do so.
Right.
Absolutely.
Of course, we want to be sure we clarify for folks that's in a virtual environment. If your child's not feeling well, but they're well enough to, sit in front of that computer and join their classmates, that's absolutely fine. It's not an expectation that they do. We want to be clear about that. If they're not feeling well enough to do that, they simply would report to their teacher through the normal means of communication, send an email to the teacher or call the school that their child's sick that day and won't participate in instruction. But it is an option in the virtual setting. Now, when we go back to face-to-face instruction, if you've chosen that option, obviously you've seen in our VB Safe materials and in our self-screening tool that will be available and is available to our parents and our students that we do not want you coming to school sick. That if you are sick, do not show up to school because we don't want you to put others at risk. And that's regardless of what you may be sick with, but if you're showing symptoms, please don't come to school. And we all know that parents sometimes, because of whatever the issues are for their day, if they can get a Tylenol in them and get that fever down, that they may put them on the bus. And we are really insisting that that does not occur to help keep each other safe, that we make sure that if you're sick, you stay home and, certainly give them whatever medications their doctor has prescribed or has shared with you to do to help treat whatever's bothering your child, but do not send them to school and certainly don't do that masking symptoms.
Because of that, perhaps Dr. Rogers wants to share some of the things we have prepared for to record whole group instruction so that those students who are in the face-to-face environment and stay home are not going to miss the whole group direct instruction because the teachers will be making a recording of their direct instruction and providing it to the students. So Dr. Rogers, do you want to expand on that a little bit, or do you think that's sufficient?
Sure. I think you captured it, Dr. Robertson. Yes, we've asked teachers to make sure that any whole group instruction is recorded, and both Zoom and Google Meet have those capabilities to record and store video for a short period of time so that those students who were unable to access the direct instruction on the day in which it was given, they'd be able to do so at a later time. And there is a caveat, though, that those recordings will not be housed forever for obvious storage reasons, but we certainly want to make sure that any student that was not able to access the direct teaching and learning that took place virtually, that they have access to it at a later time.
Great. Thank you both. And of course, that's not just for sick children, but that's also for children who, for other reasons, may not be able to participate in the synchronous instruction on a given day. And so we will have that available to our students. But of course, we want to encourage students as much as they're able to participate in the synchronous instruction, because that's where you'll be able to interact with your peers and ask questions of your teacher about the learning. And so we'll leave it there. One other question that we have, and then there's a couple things I just want to hit on really quickly, but this other question I think is important. Some folks are used to their students participating in after-school tutoring programs. Will those continue to be offered virtually? Don or Kip, Dr. Robertson, Dr. Rogers, do you guys want to tackle that?
So we have a group working right now to develop a number of mechanisms for students and parents to get additional assistance when the class is not over, or I'm sorry, when the class is over, so in the evening or afternoons. That include some type of tutoring program. There's a peer tutoring program that we're going to be offering. We've got a tutoring hotline we're going to be offering. So there'll be a number of different avenues a parent or student could access in the evening to get additional help. And a reminder, Dr. Rogers talked about this on Monday. Although the teachers will not be providing direct instruction on Monday, it is a learning day. It's an instructional day, and the teachers have office hours. So there's another opportunity. And a third opportunity is during the 75-minute class periods at secondary level, for example, teachers will be providing about 45 minutes, give or take, of synchronous instruction. And the other 30 minutes, they're available to answer any questions, give individual assistance, etc., based upon student needs. So we're going to uncover every opportunity to provide students and parents with what they need to succeed while we're in this virtual environment and face-to-face environment this year.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think that's the important message, right? And thank you for saying it, that we are going, again, we know, as I said at the beginning, this won't be perfect, but we will do our best to uncover every opportunity for children to succeed, no matter their circumstances. Let me ask you a couple of things I want to hit on just to make sure, because these are things I've been hearing. One is, will we be taking attendance? I think, Dr. Robertson, you mentioned earlier, or Dr. Rogers, maybe that we will take attendance. Could you just elaborate, Dr. Robertson, on how we will take attendance?
Yes, and so the Virginia Department of Education came out with guidelines for attendance this year. And so, in short, we will be taking attendance daily in the elementary school and daily by block in the secondary school. There are a number of ways that you can be present. One way is you show up in the synchronous session and participate, you're present. Another way is you engage in learning with the teacher at some other point during the school day. Another is you submit assignments and work that was given on that particular day, or participate in a discussion board if that was part of the lesson. The Virginia Department of Education is looking for engagement in learning on a daily basis to determine attendance. So we will be taking attendance in every block at the secondary level and daily at the elementary school level.
And of course, we'll be following up with families if we have concerns about a student's participation and attendance.
That's correct.
I want to ask about clubs and activities. We've had a lot of students ask us if there's still going to be clubs and activities that they can participate in their schools. So, Dr. Robertson, could you speak to that?
Yes. Look, one of the highlights of any student's day is when they get a chance to work with or be with their peers, whether they're participating in an athletic event or a club or an activity. So we're still going to have clubs and activities. They'll just be virtual initially. When we were able to phase back into a face-to-face environment, we have established protocols and mitigation strategies that club sponsors and activity sponsors and club members will follow. They'll be based on guidance from the CDC, the Virginia Department of Public Health, and of course the governor's office. So those protocols are in place right now, and we do plan absolutely to continue to have clubs and activities to the greatest extent possible throughout the school year. And that includes class elections and all of those things.
I'm sure that's music to the ears of many of our students and parents. So thank you for that. And I think it goes right along with this idea of we're going to do everything possible to make this a successful year for our students. And we are going to try to bring in as many of those opportunities that our students and parents are used to seeing as we possibly can, given the circumstances. Just a couple more things. There's some sample schedules that are out there in the fall opening plan, and Tuesday's right around the corner. Does everybody have the schedule for their student and know exactly when things start and what to do? And if they don't, how are we tackling that?
So schedules are in the communication that went out tonight at 6 o'clock to all families. In addition, for example, at the elementary level, if you go to your school's website, you can actually see the schedule if your child is a 3rd grader or your child is a 5th grader. At the middle school level, you can do the same. You can go to their website and see if your child's a 6th grader, what that schedule looks like versus 7th and 8th. The times are similar, but their rotations are different. And then, of course, at the high school level, we'll have all of those schedules posted on the websites by tomorrow.
That's great. And, you know, we'll just reiterate too, if you're not sure and you're listening right now and you're like, I've looked and I can't find it, call your school. Just ask to speak to the counselor, say, can you just walk me through my child's schedule for the day? Or just someone at the front desk should be able to walk you through the daily schedule, what time school starts, and in general, how to get into ClassLink and into Schoology so that you can get the messages from your teacher where they'll tell you, this is when I need you on and what I need you to be doing. Just probably one more question, and then I'm going to ask you guys to reflect with me on some closing thoughts. Behavior in a virtual environment and acceptable use of technology in a virtual environment. There have been some questions about how are we going to handle that if a student is being distracting or they're being inappropriate in terms of their use, or if they're doing other things that would be a violation of our code of conduct. How are we going to handle that in a virtual setting? We know how discipline works in the schools, but in a virtual setting, is it different?
Yeah, and so we do have within our code of conduct acceptable use policy that we are asking our students to adhere to and follow all of the guidelines and requirements for when participating virtually online. In terms of handling the discipline at that particular point in a virtual environment, we certainly are not looking to suspend any student in a virtual environment, but we will have to have some conversations with parents if we've got a situation where a student is causing by their own actions or providing inappropriate behaviors affecting the class. So we're asking our students to recognize that this is a great opportunity. It is a learning environment, and they need to follow all the particular guidelines.
And I think just asking our families to reinforce that and know that we will be in touch if we have those concerns. The teacher will be in touch. The school administration may be in touch. And also, though, if families have concerns about what's going on in their child's classroom, again, to remember, just reach out to your teacher and let them know about your concern. The teacher will work with you, and if we can't resolve it at that level, we'll work with you through our school's administration. So in many ways, a lot like what we would tell you to do in a normal school year, but in a virtual environment, just recognizing it's a little bit different. So that's most of the questions and things that I thought we might want to touch on tonight as we get ready to open school in just a couple of days, right after this Labor Day weekend. Before we go, and we just have a minute, could I ask each of you just to give me 30 seconds on your final thoughts for our families, students, and community, what to expect Monday and what you expect for the year. So I'll start with you, Dr. Robertson.
So thank you, Dr. Spence, for this opportunity. What I would say to the parents is we are looking to extend grace and flexibility to your children. We want to make sure that every day that they join us, that they feel like they're part of a learning environment, that they're cared for, they're safe. And we're going to offer, again, that grace and flexibility. And at the same time, we're going to be looking for that grace and flexibility because there's no substitute for in-person learning in a regular school year. And we're going to do our very best to provide the best possible environment every single day, no matter whether we're in person or virtual. So grace and flexibility for all.
Thank you. Dr. Rogers.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Spence. So I would just say on the 13th of this month, we will have been out of the brick and mortar setting for 6 months. That's a long time to be without kids. And I will tell you, there's not an educator in Virginia Beach City Public Schools who does not miss their students, whether they see them face-to-face or virtual. They are going to love them like nobody's business come Tuesday. So I'm excited for the school year. I know there's a lot that we don't know, but there's a lot that we do know. We don't have all of the answers, but we do know that there are answers. And we just appreciate, as Dr. Robertson says, you're partnering with us in honoring grace and flexibility as we navigate these uncharted waters.
Thank you. Dr. Alexander, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I'm just going to echo with what everyone else said is the grace, flexibility, and just a little bit of patience. as Dr. Rogers said, we don't have all the answers, but we are always seeking to find resolutions. So, when you see your students as a former teacher, as Dr. Rogers said, love them because they will love you back, and know that we are moving forward with this collectively together as a community. So thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Spence.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, we're just very excited to get back into this business, and we are extremely focused. So from a division services standpoint, from an operations perspective, we have and we will continue to make the best, safest environment that we can for when the time comes where those that have chosen face-to-face instruction are going to return to our buildings and our school buses. And we look forward to that time to get that group back. And thank you again for everybody's patience, grace, communications, helping us to make our plan the best that it can be.
Thank you. Thank you all for your words of encouragement. Thank you for your being able to really share information about how school will look when we get open, and for all the work you've done to prepare to make sure that when students come back, we are ready for them. And I think that's my final message, is we are ready for our students to come back. We are excited for our return, and we, as you heard several of our teams say, educators, this is what we thrive on. We thrive on this moment, this back to school moment. And so virtual or otherwise, we're ready for you. Now I need to also say a few things about being ready and how we can have this be a safe and a productive school year. So before I do, I want to again thank Dr. Robertson. I want to thank Dr. Rogers. I want to thank Dr. Alexander, Mr. Freeman, and I want to thank our sign language interpreters, Ms. Walraven and Yoder, and to everybody who submitted questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to all of them, but do please check out our website at vbschools.com/fall2020 for answers to all of our frequently asked questions. And that's where you can also see a recording of this session and previous sessions, which are all devoted to getting you the information you need to be ready and confident in the return of schools. And I want to thank everybody who's on this session tonight, whether you're a student or a parent or a guardian, an employee, a member of our community watching. Just thank you. I know this is hard. I know there is frustration and fear and concern, but know we're all in this together. And I want to talk about something that is really important. And that, I know we're dealing with this virus, this thing that can't be seen, and at least at this point can't be vaccinated against, but we know it's changed life for us considerably. It's really taken away any semblance of what we've considered to be normal in our lives before March. And I know the more this goes on, the more powerful that urge gets to just return to normalcy and to take bigger risks and challenge those best practices and get back to what's comfortable and what we know. We've all seen this. We've seen this on Twitter. We've seen it, folks not masking or social distancing. We've seen kids on TikTok doing silly things, but they're doing them together, and they're not paying attention to what the medical professionals are telling us. And I get it. We all want to believe that this thing's going to go away. But here's the thing: you might be invincible, but maybe your teacher isn't, or one of your classmates, or a family member. And this virus doesn't show itself easily, and you might be passing it on to other people without even knowing it. So here's what I really want to say. If we really want to be together again, and we do, if we really want our teachers and our students to be back together in our classrooms and engaging in the way that we know is best for everyone, then we have to stay the course. We need to wear our masks, wash our hands. We need to be safe, follow the guidelines that we've put out for being safe. Let's avoid large gatherings. Let's keep our distance from each other. Let's wear those masks. Let's practice good hand hygiene. Let's do everything we can right now to prevent the spread of this virus, because if we can commit to doing that, if we can commit to doing what's best for our children and be resolved to do what's right for our community, then we can keep those health metrics trending downward, improving towards green, which will improve the likelihood that our students and teachers, all of them, will be back together in our school buildings where they belong much, much sooner than if we don't. So I hope you'll join me in that effort, for everything that you have done for our kids, for everything that I know you'll do for our kids. Again, I thank you so much. So let me also then implore you to please be safe this long holiday weekend, but enjoy it with your families. And we will see you in our virtual classrooms on Tuesday morning. Thank you so much and have a great night.